Brenda Jenkins, could you please give us the invocation?
Hey, I'm Brenda Jenkins from Crossroads Community Church. I'd like it if you would please bow your head with me. Dear wise and loving Father, first let me say thank you. On behalf of all who are gathered here today, thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself. For the measures of health we need to fulfill our callings, for sustenance and for your friendship and our friendships. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thanks as well for the freedom to embrace you or the freedom to reject you. Thank you for loving us even so from your boundless and gracious nature. In the scriptures, you have said that citizens ought to obey the governing authorities, since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, I pray for our city manager and our mayor, for the various levels of city officials, and in particular for this assembled council. I'm asking that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of the times, a sense of welfare and true needs for our people, a keen thirst for justice and righteousness, and confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, personal peace in our lives and joy in their task. I pray for the agenda set before us tonight. Please give us an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved city of Freeport. It is in your most blessed name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. And now that it's 6 o'clock, we'll officially call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Mayor Miller.
Here.
Clem is absent. McClanathan.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Busker.
Here.
Brashaw.
Here.
Keister is absent, and Chesney.
Here.
Okay, and if you could join us with the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Alderman Smith.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item number 1 is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion for the approval?
So moved.
Second. We have a motion made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Brashaw for the approval of the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Item number 2 is the approval of the minutes from July 2nd, 2018's meeting. Is there a motion for the approval of these minutes?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Smith for the approval of the minutes for July 2nd. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Next, we have public comments. First is Steve Carroll.
I'm Steve Carroll, and this is about Agenda Item 9, Ordinance 2018-41. Part of this proposed ordinance reads, "Any person making personal, impertinent, abusive, profane, or slanderous remarks, or who shall become boisterous, shall be forthwith evicted from the chamber by the chair." This runs counter to the PAC determination of last week, which read in part from a previous determination, whether a remark constitute a personal attack is an entirely subjective question that is necessarily dependent upon the listener's personal perspective. When criticism involves the conduct of present or former public officials in the performance of their public duties, significant latitude must be allowed. I have forwarded to all of you the PAC determination of July 10th of last week. I hope you had a chance to read it. What you have inserted into this proposed ordinance are the words personal remarks. which is highly subjective and interpretive, as are the words personal attacks. In fact, personal remarks are what public comments are all about. This proposed ordinance does nothing to fix the problems that you now have with public comments. It's clearly obvious to everyone that the council, particularly Mr. Chesney, wants to get past this. However, this proposed ordinance ensures that this problem won't go away anytime soon. President Lyndon Johnson used to say, "Don't spit in the soup, we all gotta eat." Please stop spitting in the soup. Thanks.
Thank you. And council, if everyone's okay with it, we have, Mike Lehman would like to make an event announcement. Is everyone okay with that instead of making him wait to the end? Sure. Good? Sure. Okay, Mike.
Just wanted to, my name is Mike Lehman. I'm a resident of Lena, and I'm a patron and a customer of the Alberta's Airport. I'm here tonight to make an announcement of an event that's going to occur this Friday, July 20th. We're going to have a rendezvous of between 20 and 25 Beechcraft aircraft at the Freeport Alberta's Airport for the purpose of a practice formation flight involving all 22 aircraft at the same time. They're going to be practicing this in full view at the Freeport community. And while they are here, they're going to enjoy a lunch provided by the Hilldale Eatery downtown, and they'll be purchasing fuel from our FBO. And I just wanted to invite all of you and all of your constituents to come on out to the airport. Weather permitting, we'll get this done.
Mike, did you say a time on that?
The flight would probably, I think the flight briefing is at 1:30, so the flight would probably occur around 1 o'clock. If you're going to join us for lunch will be served at noon.
Thank you. And next we have Bernie. You're welcome to the microphone.
Good afternoon, or evening, and whatever. Bernie Murgala in South Galena. I actually wasn't going to talk about the ordinance that Steve Carroll did, but I kind of support his perspective, his point of view. Secondly, you have a potential ordinance in passing to evade or not have an elected treasurer. I am very supportive of that. I've worked in many communities where the treasurer is part of the finance department, and that stays up to date with current technologies. The other thing that bothers me is the finance director's proposed ordinance on placing that particular individual totally under the control of the city manager. I recall some conversations I had with the previous mayor when I was in that particular position, and when we had disagreements, we were always shut down. You need to probably bring this to the board if there's any termination. We in the finance area operate under a code of ethics, usually generated by the GFOA. It's very large and entitled. I've got copies here if anybody's interested in them. I don't want to see such control concentrated that people are afraid to speak up for what is right. I think the city manager is doing a good job in addressing many of the issues, but let's not get trapped into the same situation we had before. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, that will conclude public comments. We will move on to item number 4, which is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is considered to be routine in nature and acted as one motion unless there's something that a member of the council would like to remove for further discussion. Is there anything that would be desired to be removed? Seeing none, we have the consent agenda consisting of approval to receive and place on file building permits June 2018, minutes from the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting January 4th, February 1st, March 1st, April 5th, May 3rd, June 7th, and June 21st, 2018. Minutes from the Planning Commission meetings January 4th, February 8th, March 8th, May 10th, May 17th, 2018. Minutes from the Building Commission, January 10th, February 14th, March 14th, April 11th, and May 16th, 2018. Minutes from the Historic Preservation Meeting, January 16th, January 29th, February 20th, March 20th, April 17th, and May 15th, 2018. Cash and investment reports, May 31st, 2018. Finance reports, General Fund, Library Fund, Water Fund, Sewer Fund, Storm Sewer Fund, and April and May 2018. The approval of the finance bills payable in the total of $632,968.29, and the approval of payroll for pay period ending July 7th, 2018, in the total of $482,789.21. Is there a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved. Seconded.
We have a motion made by Alderman McClanathan, seconded by Alderman Ross. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the passage of the consent agenda?
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
And Ross.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you. We move on to item number 5, which is the second reading of Ordinance 2018-37. Madam Clerk, could you please read this for the record?
An ordinance of the City of Freeport authorizing the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners to waive the testing requirement as a part of the process to promote Lieutenant Kurt Timmer to the position of District Chief.
Thank you. Manager Crowe or Chief Allen? Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. If you could remember, this is the testing process where we don't have a list available because of all the current promotions. We have one candidate that is eligible because of the testing requirements, which is Lieutenant Timmer. We want to waive the normal process to allow Lieutenant Timmer to move into that position recently, very currently here, to save us some money going forward in the process and also in overtime expenses.
Discussion.
Mayor?
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. Just to reiterate something that we mentioned the last time this was up, this test is absolutely irrelevant as to whether the individual will get this or not when there's only one individual. It only comes into play for differentiating when there are multiple individuals that are qualified for the position. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Alderman Smith.
Yes, thank you. I understand that the union has weighed in and given their approval on this thing.
Correct.
There is a state law that mandates the procedure for these promotions, though, is there not?
Yeah, there is the Promotions Act.
And nothing about what's proposed tonight is crossways with the law, right?
No, there's no conflict, and we had John Breuer, the Fire and Police Commission attorney, weigh in on this, and this was his solution to the problem.
Thanks, Chief.
Madam Chair.
Alderman Chesney.
Thank you, and Chief, given that there's no minimum requirement, in theory, this person could take this test, fill it out in 10 seconds, and so this is largely just to expedite the process and to ensure also lower cost to the city, but given that state statute doesn't have a minimum requirement, the outcome of this test is irrelevant.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the passage of Ordinance 2018-37?
Smith.
Yes.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem. He's absent. McClanathan.
Aye.
And Ross.
Aye.
That passes 6-0.
Thank you. Item number 6 is the second reading of Ordinance 2018-38. Could you please read this for the record?
An ordinance granting a special use permit to allow for the operation of a temporary recreational ballpark for property located at 1001 to 1003 Loris Avenue in Freeport.
Thank you. Director McDonald.
Thank you. You should recall on May 7th, 2018, an application for a special use permit from COP Enterprise was received by the Community Development Department. It was to establish or allow for a temporary ballpark in a P1 professional use district at 1001 to 1003 Loris Avenue in Freeport. All adjacent property owners were notified of the public hearing. As well, the public hearing was posted in the Journal Standard. Application was kept on file in our office. A temporary sign was erected on site, and we received no comments regarding the project. Additionally, there were no adverse findings of fact. At the Planning Commission meeting They approved the project on June 14th, and this is the second reading for you.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw.
thank you. And it was unanimously?
It was.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the passage of ordinance 2018-38?
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
And Ross.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you. Item number 7, first reading of ordinance 2018-39.
An ordinance of the City of Freeport amending Title VI Administration, Chapter 236 Accounting and Finance, and Title 10 Employment Provisions, Chapter 288 Officers and Employees Generally of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport, changing the Office of Finance Director to a position.
Thank you. Manager Crowe.
Yes, so want to clarify something. The ordinance had already been changed a year ago when the city manager came in with a finance director, as is all department heads work for the city manager. So that was one clarification. All this does is change the finance director from an office to a position. This aligns. What this does was it'll allow us. It doesn't change the roles, doesn't change the responsibilities. It strictly will allow the finance director, if required, to assume an office. If, say, we pass the resolution to submit for the treasurer to be elected, the treasurer position to be appointed, it would give us the ability to make the finance director that position, because it would be strictly a single office. Sorry about the confusion there.
Discussion.
Mayor,
Alderman McClanathan.
thank you. And this is for council. And this is following up on what Manager Crowe said. As he had indicated, a year ago, we changed our ordinances, and these, with very few exceptions, the positions don't come before us for approval or rejection in regards to who the city manager wants to have in these positions. And that form that we have here is actually in compliance with the requirements for a city manager form of government as opposed to the prior form of government. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so if we had, follow up, Mayor, if that's fine, while you get a drink of water. Sorry about that. Okay, so basically, if we hadn't made that change, we wouldn't be in compliance with state statute.
That's correct. You would not be in compliance with the Illinois Municipal Code.
Yeah. And nothing in this change, going from position to office, changes the dynamics of the hiring and firing process than it currently is today if we didn't even make that change, correct?
That's correct. And there's no requirement under the Illinois Municipal Code that the position of finance director be an actual office. It's not spelled out anywhere in the Illinois Municipal Code to that effect.
One final question, if I may. Is there any benefit or what's the significance about keeping it an office versus position under the city manager form of government?
You would not be able to combine the roles if it remained as an office, because under the Illinois Municipal Code, one who serves as an officer cannot serve multiple offices.
No other difference, though?
No, there's no change whatsoever.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw.
thank you. I appreciate that verification of what Peter just asked, but I also want to verify that this in no way adversely affects Mr. Bukas's role with the city.
I'm sorry, is that question directed to
Yes,
me? Or
it was
is
to
directed
you.
No,
Sorry, Council.
it does not change his role with the city whatsoever.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Alderman Smith.
Well, we heard a member of the audience express some misgivings about this change because, in his opinion, it would concentrate greater authority and power into the manager's hands and create potentially, maybe not with the current set of players, but in the future create the potential that there wouldn't be proper oversight over this office. Is that what I heard him say?
That was correct. However, there is no change in the relationship between the city under Illinois Municipal Code, by changing this from a officer to a position, the financial director still has the same relationship under the code that we have adopted with city manager.
No, I understand that. So effectively, what we're making with the change of this ordinance is just a legal distinction?
Yep.
Is that the case?
It's just a change in terminology.
Which is an important one.
Yes, if we don't make this change in terminology, then the finance director could not also serve as the treasurer. That's the only thing that this ordinance will address. How the individual is hired and fired, it has already been set in a
Okay.
previously adopted ordinance that was adopted when the city adopted the city manager form of government.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for that point to be lost on me.
Any further discussion?
Mayor,
Alderman Chesney.
motion to move forward.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Alderman Chesney, seconded by Alderman Busker to move ordinance 2018-39 onto the next regularly scheduled council meeting. On to item number 8, which is the first reading of ordinance 2018-40. Madam Clerk, could you please read this?
An ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the City of Freeport regarding the regulation and zoning of solar energy systems. Chapter 1240, General Provisions and Definitions, Section 1240.06, Chapter 1248, Agricultural Districts, Section 1248.01, Chapter 1250, Residence Districts, Sections 1250.01 and 1250.05, Chapter 1252, Business Districts, Section 1252.01, Chapter 1254, Manufacturing Districts, Section 1254.01, Chapter 1256, P1, Professional Districts, Sections 1256.01 and 1256.02, Chapter 1258, H1, Medical Use Districts, Section 1258.01, Chapter 1259, RR, Riverfront Redevelopment District, Section 1259.02, Chapter 1260, F1, Floodplain District, Section 1260.02, Chapter 1446, Licensing of Commercial Contractors, Sections 1446.01 and 1446.06, Chapter 1477, Solar Energy Systems, which has been added in its entirety of the codified ordinances of the City of Freeport.
Thank you. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the ordinance that was presented to you by Attorney Cox at the Committee of the Whole, and it's in accordance with Soul Smart Communities. We have added the section as requested by council for permit fees, where it says the applicable permit fees for individual solar energy systems requiring no building permits under this section is required to be based upon the DC nameplate capacity of all arrays at the rate of $10 per kilowatt hour, or kilowatt, excuse me, with a minimum fee of $100 and a maximum fee of $1,000. No fee shall be required for insurance permit for any solar energy system to be installed on any property owned by the City of Freeport. All other fees relating to building are listed in the code 144.2, which has been reviewed by the Building Commission. So this adds those codes, the fees that it has requested. No other changes from what we presented to you at the Committee of the Whole, and I'm standing by for questions.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. Manager Crowe, when I read through the permit fees, they range in an amount of $100 to $1,000. So I'm assuming that the $1,000 are for the large panels, supposedly like around the airport or water treatment plant?
It would be for the whole array, so that when they have an array, you have multiple panels, and it would be what the array was rated at as they come into the permit. Similar to what we do with size of buildings, square footage of buildings, where they have the permit, correct me if I'm wrong, Director McDonald, but we get the permits based upon the square footage of the project. It's very similar to this.
Follow up? So the $10 per kilowatt then, of course, would top out at that $1,000?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Further discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Chesney.
And I know Attorney Cox is pretty well versed in solar. Has he had an opportunity to review this specific ordinance? Did he write this, or who wrote this one?
Attorney Cox actually wrote this ordinance.
Okay. And I assume he's had a chance to do final reviews.
He has, and it's been presented to both Planning Commission as well as the Building
Understood.
Commission.
Thanks.
Any further discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Bradshaw.
motion to move this forward?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Alderman Bradshaw, seconded by Alderman McClanathan, to move ordinance 2018-40 on to the next regularly scheduled meeting. Item number 9 is the first reading of ordinance 2018-41. Madam Clerk, could you please read this for the roll?
An ordinance amending Title IV Legislation, Chapter 220, Council, Section 220.10 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport regarding rules of council.
Thank you. Attorney Sosnowski.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, what you have in front of you is an ordinance that has been drafted in response to a July 10th letter that the City of Freeport received from an Associate Attorney General in the Illinois Attorney General's office. On July 10th, we received a non-binding advisory letter from an Assistant Attorney General, and that letter was in response to a request for review that was filed by Mr. Steve Carroll in regards to some comments that he made at a December 2017 meeting. At that meeting, according to the letter that Mr. Carroll sent to the Attorney General's office, he felt that the city violated the Open Meetings Act by improperly restricting comments that he was making at that meeting. At that meeting, as you may recall, as many of you were here, Mr. Carroll made comments directly attributing directing comments specifically to Alderman and the mayor. And at the time, the City of Freeport had an ordinance which dated back at least 20 plus years, as far as we could tell. And that ordinance restricted individuals from making comments specifically to council members or specifically to the mayor. According to the ordinance that is still in place as of today, the individuals that rise to speak during public comment are asked to address the body as a whole and not to address individual members. Mr. Carroll felt that the actions that occurred on that day violated the Open Meetings Act, and so he properly addressed a letter to the Public Access Counselor's office and asked for a request for review. The City of Freeport filed its response. Part of our response was a copy of the ordinance and the fact that the ordinance specifically stated that comments were to be directed to the body as a whole, as well as providing a copy of the video and explaining the city's position on that particular issue. It's important to note that a non-binding advisory opinion is not law. It is simply the opinion of the associate attorney who wrote the opinion in this particular case. Only courts of the state of Illinois or the Illinois legislature can set out law, and in this particular case, the Illinois Open Meetings Act is actually silent as to whether or not a municipal body can have these types of restrictions on public comment. What the municipal code says, or what the Illinois Open Meetings Act says, is that a municipal body can establish reasonable rules to govern public comment. I would imagine that when this ordinance was drafted, however long ago that it was drafted, that the body felt at the time that this was a reasonable rule. And in this particular instance, to my knowledge, this is the first time that the matter was challenged. When we look at the non-binding advisory opinion that was received from the Attorney General's office, you may note that the opinion does not cite any Illinois case law standing for the proposition that the rule in this particular case is unlawful. What the opinion does is cites a case from California, which arguably in the state of Illinois would have no binding effect, but is advisory, certainly. But it cites a ordinance out of California that the California courts felt restricted unlawfully an individual's public comment. Given the opinion that we've received in this case, we've recommended to the council that the council consider the advice of the Attorney General's office, which is to revise the ordinance to remove the section regarding the inability of an individual to address individual council members. I will note that during public comment, I did hear Mr. Carroll address the part of the ordinance regarding referencing personal remarks. And I would note, and I would imagine the council would note this as well, if you look at the draft in front of you, the language regarding no question shall be asked, or any person making personal, impertinent, abusive, profane, or slanderous remarks, so on and so on. That language, you will see it's completely unchanged, meaning that language was in the ordinance prior, and we've not recommended that it be removed today. The reason why we've not recommended that it be removed today is because the Attorney General's opinion specifically states that while personal, abusive, profane, slanderous remarks certainly could be debated as to whether or not something was profane or something was slanderous, that determination is in fact the determination of the chair. And the Illinois Attorney General has issued binding PAC opinions on this very subject. So we see no need to remove that language from the ordinance. The advisory opinion that we received from the Attorney General's office did not recommend that language be removed. The only recommendation that was made, and again, it was just for your consideration. You don't have to remove the language that we're suggesting that you remove. There's been no law dictating that you remove this language, but we believe that it's good practice to do so, and we think that it's honorable that the City Council is wanting to move as quickly as it can to address this issue. So again, in this case, back in December, the Mayor Miller was simply enforcing the language that was on the books at the time. Attorney Zito was here at the meeting on that day. Had I been sitting in this chair, I would have given the same advice that when ordinances are on the books, we have an obligation as the elected officials of the city to make sure that they are enforced. And until we're told differently by a court of law, or in this case with a non-binding advisory opinion, that's exactly what we would advise that you do.
Thank you. Discussion.
Mayor? Mayor? Bob?
Smith?
No.
No?
Just
Oh,
me.
okay.
Thanks.
Alderman McClanahan.
Do we know, not that it's ultimately going to matter at the end of the day, but do we know when this rule was initially put into place, restricting it in its current form of saying that you can't address current council member or specific council members, it has to be to the council as a whole?
So we went clear back to 1998. And that existence, that rule existed clear back to that point. We could not find any copies older than that. We went back through the records. At that point, were hard copy, we're off electronic, and we are missing one or two of those ordinances. So we know that it was in place in 1998, do not know if it was in place prior to that.
Okay, could I follow up, Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. And this is with council. Well, when you said the specific requests, I'm reading off of page 6, the last paragraph of the opinion issued, where it says, in accordance with the conclusions expressed in this determination, this office requests that the council permit members of the public to address individual council members at future meetings, notwithstanding that the members are not required to respond to comments. This office also requests that the council permit members of the public to refer to the individuals whom they are criticizing or otherwise commenting on by name. The council may wish to revise its public comment rules accordingly. Is that in its entirety the sole requests and recommendations of the PAC for changes to our ordinance?
That's correct.
Okay.
And that is exactly what has been drafted here. Again, I think it's an important distinction to point out that the PAC non-binding advisory letter that we received did not say that the city of Freeport could not have reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on public comment. What that means is that the PAC opinion does not say that the council cannot still have rules that restrict commentary that may be personal or slanderous or abusive or profane, because if you think about it logically, those are the types of comments that could in fact rise to the level of disruption of a meeting. And the PAC opinion makes it very clear that disruption is the issue.
Follow-up, Mayor. I realize this is going to call for some speculation, but and you may not be able to, may be too speculative, but do you have any idea why, when addressing those last things that you mentioned, they referenced a Ninth Circuit opinion and nothing from any Illinois law in regards to that? And then furthermore, follow-up to that, or second part of that, if it was even addressed for the Ninth Circuit, well, why was that not included in any of the recommendations? What does that mean for us?
To my knowledge, based on our research, there is no Illinois case or federal circuit case in our circuit that is that would speak to this issue whatsoever.
Okay.
I'm assuming that they had to go to the Ninth Circuit because that was the only jurisdiction that had any sort of litigation that they could pull from that would be in any way, shape, or form advisory in this particular instance.
Follow-up, Mayor. But notwithstanding that reference earlier in there, when it comes to their actual requests and recommendations for us, it's only the things that I read in regards to allowing people to address individual council members, correct?
That is my understanding.
Well then, in light of the fact that this rule was put in place at least 20 years ago, and we have an advisory opinion, and fully respecting what you're saying in regards to that, it's not a court opinion, it's not binding, but notwithstanding that, from my standpoint, it's not worth any litigation in regards to it, one way or the other. It wouldn't be good use of funds. So I would move to approve the ordinance, or at this point, I will move to move it forward, so we can move forward on it.
And I'll second that, but I have a couple questions, Mayor.
Alderman Chesney.
Thank you. Attorney Sosnowski, who on the city council or the mayor put this rule in place that was objected to?
To my knowledge, no one.
Okay. So nobody in this body put this rule into place, and Mayor Miller in December enforced a rule that she didn't put in place, this body didn't put in place, that was objected to by a resident, and now this city council is changing the ordinance to reflect a non-binding opinion.
That's correct.
Okay.
Further discussion?
Mayor, motion to suspend the rules.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor made by Alderman McClanathan, seconded by Alderman Chesney to move ordinance 2018-41 on to the next regular meeting. And then we have a motion to suspend the rules made by Alderman Chesney, seconded by Alderman McClanathan. Suspension of the rules is non-debatable and must pass by a 2/3 majority. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the suspension of the rules only?
Smith,
No.
No.
Busker, Brashaw,
Aye.
Keister, I'm sorry, he is absent. Chesney,
Aye.
Clem is absent. McClanathan,
Aye.
and Ross.
I'm going to say no.
That does not pass by 2/3.
Okay, then we will put this ordinance on to the next regularly, okay?
Mayor, one question before we go to the next. That was just motion to suspend. Question?
Yes.
Since this is going forward to another meeting for second reading, based on your review of this opinion, is there anything additional that we need to have changed, added whatsoever to our rules between now and then to come into compliance with this opinion that was issued?
No.
Non-binding opinion. Okay.
No, there isn't anything
Okay,
else.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to item number 10, which is the adoption of Resolution 2018-38. Madam Clerk, could you please read this for the record?
A resolution of the City of Freeport providing for the submission to the electors of the City of Freeport, Stevenson County, a referendum question of whether the elected office of City Treasurer should be changed to a hired position and combined with the position of City Finance Director at the general election to be held on November 6, 2018.
Thank you. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the request of council, we had reached out to the Illinois Treasurers Association when the position came open for treasurer, and discussion with them and studying other municipalities. 90% of the municipal treasurers are appointed or hired in the state of Illinois, and the majority of them are actually dual-rolled as both the treasurer and the financial director. Only 10% are currently elected in the state. The savings to the city would be in the area of $78,000 to $85,000 based upon salary and benefits if we combine these two positions. This is the recommendation to forward this on to the electorate so it can be voted on at the November general election. And the question is, shall the elected office of the city of treasurer for the city of Freeport be changed to a higher position combined with the position of the city director to save the city money, city financial director?
Questions?
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. Manager Crow, what percentages of other cities have this type of format?
Combined?
Yes.
So it's 38% of the cities in the state of Illinois have a combined position.
38?
38%. 90% are either appointed or hired as a separate member within the accounting department.
Thank you.
Further discussion?
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Chesney.
Manager Crow, talk to me a little bit about practice as it relates, we've had an elected treasurer's position for quite a while, actually forever, as long back as we can date.
25 years.
Yeah. So, talk a little bit about best practice, a little bit with this form of government. Talk about that process of how we're trying to adopt best practices for the city of Freeport, and then also, one common concern would be that I would have, and I suspect many people in the public would share, is what took place in Dixon, the checks and balances. So how do we assure that the Freeport dollars are not only accounted for but protected, and how do we alleviate any anxiety that this particular change could reduce those checks and balances?
So it's a multi-part question, so we'll take best practices. We were in a unique situation because we had an elected treasurer that had been in the office forever. The Illinois treasurer position under 25 years, which is very unusual for elected treasurers. The amount of training that has to be in the position to oversight a treasurer, Linda Buss brought a unique capability to that position because she had been in the position for so long. What they're seeing in the state is the reason why the Illinois Treasurers Association is moving more and more and promoting more and more the appointed position or the hired position is because then you can get somebody that has financial background and actually has that CPA degree or financial certifications through IGFOA. She had all those certifications because of the years in the office. So they're recommending this going forward. In fact, the president of the Illinois Treasurers Association is a combined finance director and treasurer. What's interesting is the communities, 90% of the communities that have a combined financial director and treasurer are communities that have a city manager. So the public understands every bill, every receipt that we put out is reviewed by me on a weekly basis. I even review, and that's one of the checks when we have the auditor, is they are checking, is the city manager signing off on the payroll? And I review the payroll before it's even paid. So the checks and balances in the city manager form of government is the financial director / treasurer, and the city manager is the check in that, and then the auditor checks and makes sure those checks and balances are in place.
Follow up, Mayor. And I think it's important to note this is, Treasurer Buss did a very nice job for the city for a long time. And this change or this proposed change or this referendum, none of this is a reflection on her duties or her office. This is simply giving the opportunity for the city of Freeport to look at adopting a more common practice given the change in form of government, correct?
That's correct. As I said, she did a fantastic job as treasurer, as moving, but she also had a unique set of skills in the fact she had been there for 25 years. It gave her to build up the opportunity to build up expertise that you normally don't find in the position of treasurer.
Final comment, Mayor. And if the city was to adopt this, we would then put this in place, but then if not, this would be an elected position.
That's correct.
And nothing would change. So
That's
this is
correct.
just testing the pulse of citizens of Freeport, find out what they want to do, and we'll proceed in any direction.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mayor.
Alderman Smith.
And if we didn't adopt this, we would likely have to wait at least 10, maybe 15 years to train up another elected treasurer to the level of expertise that Linda Buss had when she left here.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, she was recognized within the Illinois Treasurers Association as probably one of the experts in treasurers.
Further discussion?
Motion to move forward?
Second.
Actually, it's a resolution.
Oh, it's a resolution.
Motion to it.
I'll second that.
Okay, so before you is a motion made by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman Busker for the adoption of Resolution 2018-38. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Smith.
Yes.
Pardon me. Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you. Item number 11 is the adoption of Resolution 2018-39. Madam Clerk, could you please read this?
Resolution of the City of Freeport authorizing and approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Stevenson County Circuit Clerk and the Stevenson County State's Attorney.
Thank you. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we, Chief Barklow and I were approached by Attorney Kuhn about 8 weeks ago and said, we've got a problem. There is a lot of our bills that are piling up for collection over at the circuit clerk. What happens is they try the OVs and TRs that we have over there that are of that level, and if people do not pay them, they go, because we do not have an agreement to do a collection, they sit and wait for people to pay. And they have up to, it's kind of clogging, it is clogging the circuit clerk because they continue to have to call these people back. What the county did was 3 years ago, they went to a collection. I've talked to Attorney Cox, Attorney Szymanowski, and about this, and we're all in as well as Attorney Zito, have all been working with this along with Todd Barklow, and we believe that this is the best way. We get this intergovernmental agreement, so after they don't show up for their collection of this, it's turned over to Harris & Harris, which is the collection. The cost is nothing to the city. The collection agency there's an additional fee turned on to the collection, added to the collection when it goes to the collection agency. That's where the collection agency, this county is currently having between a 15 and an 18% success rate in collecting on these. So this will allow us to clear out some of those OVs and TRs that occur both in community development and also in the police department that appear before the circuit court, and will allow us to use the collection process the county does, so it's at no cost to us.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you. Manager Crowe, I'm actually really excited about this. I think this will help with those collections. My question is regarding these ordinance violations and the traffic tickets that are out there. How far can we reach back for collections? I mean, can we go back 2 years? Can we go back 5 years? Can we go back 7 years? What is the limit?
statute of limitations, 7 years, I believe. That's so.
Thank
Mayor?
you.
Alderman Chesney.
What is previous practice then? Could you walk us through?
So the previous practice is they would continue to call for these people to show up at court. There's a monthly collection of the bills, and when they didn't show up, it would roll over again and just be held up, where the county is actually, when they don't show up the first time, they're turning them over to the collection agency. So our guys were, the OVs and TRs were continually being called back and were not being collected because they were not showing up.
Follow, Mayor. And what is the anticipated 15-18% you said,
return.
and what will that be in dollars?
I don't have that figure because I know we're only collecting about 25% of our OVs and TRs that go over the circuit court.
And then if somebody doesn't pay, are they losing their driver's license for things like that?
It's turned over to iDrop, which is what happens is if it goes into iDrop, their state tax return is held back, and that's where it's paid out of.
Can they lose their driver's license for non-payment?
I'd have to rely on either.
I don't believe that they lose their driver's license for non-payment.
There are some offenses that they could if we turn them into the Secretary of State's office, but there's a specific process for that, and that would be handled by Attorney Kuhn, who handles your municipal prosecution.
These are all OV and not state charges, right?
Understood.
Yes, that's correct.
Mayor.
Alderman Smith.
Question for council. I remember a time as a young patrolman where we would peruse through the drawer and we'd find a bunch of bench warrants for people who didn't timely pay their fines. After what's called a rule to show cause, is there some reason that process is not implemented for the collection of these unpaid fines? Because after all, they've been adjudicated. The circuit court has found people guilty on these offenses.
It will be now with the process that Harris and Harris goes through. That's part of what they do.
What's part of what they do? I'm sorry.
Part of their process as a collection agency is if they are able to locate someone upon which a rule could be filed, they turn that information over then.
Okay. So ultimately, they don't escape the fine merely because they refuse to pay it.
No.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution R 2018-39.
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
Just one final comment.
Yes.
Manager Crow, maybe it's obvious. Why wasn't this done years ago? What was the thought process? I guess, what would be the opposition to this? What are we missing, if anything?
I don't know. This is, I'll give Todd credit because it was he and Tony that brought this forward, and this was really being pushed because we were bogging down the circuit clerk. So it was never really brought to anybody's attention that we were having this problem until Tony and Todd brought it forward to me, and then that's when we started. We've been in discussions for about 2.5 months on this, so to get this nailed down.
Mayor?
Alderman McClanathan.
It's been a long-standing issue both at the city and the county level. The county more than the city just due to volume. And the county board at one time, it was in excess of $1 million that was in uncollected fines and costs. Now granted, a lot of that $1 million probably is uncollectible at some level. But due to that process, due to the county at that time looking at, okay, we've got a significant sum here, what can be done about it, that led them to look through some of these collection procedures. And it doesn't have any impact on what they owe other than actually with a judgment, it'll continue to accrue some interest on it. Tying it into the iDrop system has led to some of those that have been previously falling through the gaps that were able to be collected on it. So realistically, is it going to be a massive windfall whereby all of our problems are solved on it? No, the county's not experiencing that, but they are experiencing that it's real money that is found, and it's money that 99 times out of 100 wasn't going to be collected anyway. So I don't really see a downside to it for us going in and doing the system that they've had success on over the last couple of years.
Any further discussion? Then we have a motion made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Busker for the adoption of Resolution 2018-39. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
That resolution is adopted 6-0.
Thank you. Item number 12 is the approval for bids for leasing of 2 John Deere mowers for the city cemetery. Director Carr.
Yes, in front of you, you'll see a lease agreement with Holland and Sons for what would be the state bid contract for the John Deere Z930R.
We were notified this morning, or just 15 minutes before the meeting, that they had actually sent us the wrong quote.
Yes. So the state contract for last year that ended on July 2nd, which was actually the day we got the quote, is what is in front of you. On July 3rd, they started a new state contract, which is actually the next model up, and it's $1,000 cheaper.
So what happens is the $1,000 will come off the cost in this and reduce both mowers, so it'll be $2,000 less, which will lower our monthly lease payments as we go forward.
Mayor,
Alderman McClanathan.
which figure do you guys have then? So looking at the one released by the clerk earlier.
So what currently the price that the lease is based upon is $8,833 per 28 cents per mower. That price reduces by what, $1,000?
Yeah, the price they just quoted is $7,808.18.
And is that reduction also reflected in the leasing option?
It will be.
Okay.
Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
So we're getting the newer model for $1,000 less?
Yes.
And I cleared this before, when we found this out just before the meeting, I cleared this with Attorney Cinzanowski, and she said we can go ahead and approve the lease, and based upon the verbal here, and if it comes in at that, then I can go ahead and sign it as the lease. But if it, so.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Busker.
motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Mayor,
Alderman McClanathan.
could you read that price again on what is the lower price that we're approving?
Yes, the lower price is $7,808.18.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. The lease offer price, then it's lower than the $165.04 a month per mower?
Yes. I would believe so. I haven't seen the lease option because it comes in tomorrow. John Deere was closed at that time, so they couldn't get that locked down.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Alderman Smith.
So what we're approving is actually a $2,000 reduction on this bid because we're quoting 2 mowers, right?
Yes, sir.
And these mowers were supposed to be delivered tomorrow, and
one will be
delivered tomorrow, if this was approved. So if, for council, we actually have 2 mowers down right now.
Seeing no further discussion, we have a motion on the floor made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Ross for the approval of the bids as stated. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
And Ross.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you. Item number 13, consideration and discussion of bid opening on June 5th, 2018 for the fixed base services at the Freeport Elvis Airport. Manager Crow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we've gone through several negotiations with Darrell for the fixed-based operation, and I believe we have come to an agreement. I know there was initially a request about additional flow fees. So what has changed here is that this sets the price the first year at $85,000. Next year in 19, it is a 5% increase. However, Darrell will take over the cost of the leasing of the fuel truck, and we are currently only receiving 10-cent flow fee on the 100 LL. this will add a 10-cent flow fee for the, sorry, my mind's, let me go, for the aviation fuel Jet A, thank you, Jet A fuel. And this sets up a 3-year contract. Why this is important is we are in the negotiations right now with a company to move here out of Rockford, and they are looking for a more permanent setting with that, with a FBO here at the airport. Daryl and I are actually meeting with them tomorrow.
Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
Thank you. So are we going to have a contract in front of us that lays all this out, or are we approving this in principle, and then are you just going to sign it, or what?
No, so what you have is the terms of the contract that was in there. That terms will then be, if you approve these terms, that we will then take it into Aaron, we'll put it, Zito will put it into the contract. Daryl and I will make sure that that's good and then bring it for final approval on August 6th for you.
Okay, and follow-up, Mayor, if I may? And then the flow fees that we are going to, we're going to be sharing some of the revenues. What is that rate that we agreed on?
So it's 10 cents for both fuel. It'll generate, the figures I have is currently our flow fuel payment to the city is $1,000 for the one last year for the 100 LL. We're actually flow more Jet A. We looked at it, Jet A would generate about $1,500 in flow fees to us.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you. Manager Crowe, then, Mr. Jansen has looked at all these terms that we have in front of us, and he is...
Oh, Daryl?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Jansen.
I'm sorry.
Daryl Jansen.
Daryl Jansen, I'm sorry, yes.
I didn't mean to be so informal. But he has agreed to these terms in effect that we have before us?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? So before you was a motion made by Alderman Chesney, seconded by Alderman Busker to, for the consideration and the discussion, which will be moved forward to the next regularly scheduled council meeting. Do we need a vote on that? Okay, Madam Clerk, could you take the roll on that?
And Mayor, or Madam Clerk, I think you are, yeah, so look on your face.
Yes.
I think what we're saying is we're approving the parameters to have it brought back at next council in
for the approval of the contract.
So it's really not moved forward, correct? Am I getting hung up on the terminology?
I think if we approve the terms as set forward here with the final approval of the contract at the next council meeting.
Right now, what's on the agenda is approval of bid opening for fixed-base services. So these are the terms that we've received. Thank you. What we have on the agenda is approval of bid opening for fixed-base services. These are the fixed-base services that we've received. So these terms are what require approval, and then myself or Attorney Zito will prepare a formal contract based on these terms that will then come back before the council for formal approval, most likely with an accompanying resolution that would authorize then the mayor to execute the agreement.
Okay. And now go ahead and read. Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
And that passes 6-0.
Okay, thank you very much. Next is department head reports. Finance.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have really nothing to report tonight.
Any
Hopefully-
questions for finance?
Pardon?
Hopefully. Good. All right. Community development.
Thank you, Mayor. No report tonight.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
Thank you, Director McDonald. How are we coming on demolitions?
We're working on the next RFP. We anticipate having a single RFP to use up the remainder of the demolition funds.
Do we have a anticipated number for this year, or? Any
Not yet.
projection?
As many as our budget allow, and we won't have those numbers probably until another week or so.
Okay, thanks.
Public Works.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Wanted to give the public a heads up. We're going to begin hydrant flushing next week. That was part of Tom since he's not here. I figured I'd just wrap the water and sewer in with the Public Works. So we're going to begin hydrant flushing next week, and it's going to be going for 2 weeks. Forestry's been cutting down trees and cleaning up the storm damage from over the weekend. And we plan on paving Stewart from Lincoln to Stevenson tomorrow, and hopefully either finish tomorrow or on Wednesday.
Madam Mayor?
Thank you. Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you. Director, are you still patching potholes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Fire.
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Questions for Fire? Police.
Thank you, Mayor. No report tonight.
Questions? IT. Okay. And Airport. Nothing. All right, then that will move us on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two quick things. I want to recognize that Chief Allen has been recently received his Chief Fire Officer designation from the his national organization. So this is it's not awarded to everybody. We should be receiving a plaque. I plan to have the mayor present that plaque as well as his pin. This is an honor to him and to the community that he's been honored with this designation. On July 29th, Sunday, there will be a youth cleanup of the Pecatonica Path. Everybody, even though it says youth organizations are doing it, everybody's welcome to join it. We are going to have a dumpster provided from the city for that cleanup. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And as most of the council knows, Alderman Smith officially gave me his resignation this evening for stepping down from the 4th Ward because of moving out of the district. It's important that you live in the district that you represent. So we are sad to see him leaving the council, and just wanted to say how much we appreciate all your service to the community and value your input, and appreciate all the time that you put on. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And just a couple of things that are happening in the next week. This next Wednesday night, the 27th at 5 o'clock, Pretzel City Kitchen will actually have their open house. So that's something that has been in the works for several years. So if you have time and would like to avail yourself, 5 o'clock next Wednesday night would be a great time to go check that out. And then also the following Saturday, which is the 28th, there is an event sponsored by Larry Sanders with Flight Radio. He is doing a recreation fun day in the park at Taylor Park, and it goes from noon until 8 o'clock. So if anyone would like to avail themselves over to Taylor Park for some events of just a fun day, please make yourself available for that. So that's all I have. And so Alderman Smith.
Thank you, Your Honor. As you pointed out, this will be my last council meeting for the foreseeable future, if not permanently, because of my change of residence. I would just like to express to the residents of the 4th Ward my gratitude for supporting me for office, and to give them assurance that at the time I ran for this seat, I didn't anticipate moving out of the ward. And I appreciate their full faith and confidence in electing me to office, and I just want them to know that that's not lost on me. I've been gratified to be part of this council. I think that we've gotten a lot of things accomplished in the brief time that I've been here, and I think that the effort here has been totally collaborative, and I've enjoyed working with each and every one of the council members, and I just want everybody to know that. Change sometimes is uncomfortable for people, but I think it's a good thing. And forgive me, I've lost who this quote is by, but someone once very succinctly said that the only thing worse than change is for everything to remain exactly the same. So change is a component of everybody's future, and I have high hopes for the future of Freeport. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Busker.
A couple things tonight. First thing is the neighborhood watch for the 5th Ward is tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock at the First Church of the Nazarene. Second is over the past few weeks, there's been a ad going on Facebook about Freeport having a cleanup. Well, that's actually Freeport, Texas, but that would be something that maybe next year we could look at including something like that in the budget, if anyone else is interested.
Sorry about that. We're already in discussion with Gills and Mooring about doing that.
Thank you. Alderman Brashaw.
Nothing this evening, Your Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Chesney.
Thank you, and I just like to recognize Bob and for your great efforts. You know, this council, with your input before you officially took office, was instrumental in bringing this change to Freeport, and I've enjoyed working with you. I've especially appreciated your expertise in law enforcement, and I'm hopeful that the next appointment will bring that same or similar background and thoughtfulness to the council. So thanks again for your leadership on so many levels, and wish you the best of luck in your new endeavors. So not that I won't talk to you.
Thank you. Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. I also wanted just to take a moment to say thank you to Bob. You know, I look back when I first started the state's attorney's office, shortly, not too long after, then you left in your position here, and then now I got to work with you on the council for a little while, and unfortunately, it was too short of a time again, but I respected what you brought to the table back in that capacity. I respected what you brought to the table here, and thank you for your work and the time that we had here together.
Thank you.
Alderman Ross.
Okay, I just want to say Neighborhood Watch will be this Thursday at VFW at 6 p.m. And also I'd like to ditto what Alderman Chesney and Alderman McClellan says. Bob, good job. Well done.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, we will move on to item number 18, which is public comments. Is there anyone? Tommy. Sorry.
Coming up on the 21st, the Pink Hill is coming to the St. Vincent's campus.
Say it again, Tommy.
Pink Hill is coming to St. Vincent's campus on this Saturday.
Okay, anything else?
And I want to tell you, Joey, you did a good job, Mayor, you did a good job, but doing. We want to ask you about the old City Hall. You got an update about the old City Hall in Stevenson Street?
Not at this time, I don't, Tommy, but thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 19. Madam Clerk, could you please read this for the record?
Pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C2, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. Pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C11, litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting. Pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C21, discussion of minutes lawfully closed under this act, whether for purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by Section 2.06, with action to follow the last item.
Thank you. Is there a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Brashaw for the executive session. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
And Ross. Passes 6-0.